Hello, Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 12, Descent and Alliance Approaches to the Study of Kinship in India, we are continuing our topic Application of Descent Theory to the Study of Kinship System in North India, and the subtopic is Ceremonial Exchange of Gifts among Kin. Ceremonial exchange of gifts on the occasion of life cycle rituals provides us with the understanding of a paternal behavior among various categories of kin. Generally, the bride givers, in correspondence with their inferior status, vis-a-vis bride takers, initiate the process of gift giving during the marriage and continues to give greater amount of gifts. In other words, we can say that gift giving and receiving is a well-defined social activity. In sociological vocabulary, we can put the same thing in this way. We look at the groom's sister's husband or father's sister's husband as a wife taker. Similarly, we look at the groom's wife's brother or his mother's brother as a wife giver. Now, if the gift to wife givers by wife takers and by wife givers against are known by the same term, then we can say that in opposition to wife givers, his agnates and wife takers have been merged into one category. This is so because of the groom's wife's brothers. The groom is a wife taker and groom's wife taker is his sister's husband or father's sister's husband. These two set of wife takers are on one side and the wife givers are on the other. F.G. Belle in Odisha and Oscar in Rampur have also recorded the flow of gifts from affinal kin wife relatives and paternal kin mother's relative. According to A.C. Mayer, the function of the gift made by uterine and affinal kin is similar, that is, to enhance the state of wife taker. In sociological terms, we say that this type of exchange of gift shows the hypergamous nature of marriage in India. In other words, the woman is always given into the group which is higher in status, and the flow of gift from the family maintains this distinction forever. This is in turn explains the nature of kin relationship in North India. Now let us move to the next point, application of alliance theory to the study of kinship system in South India. South India comprises the geographical area covered by the states of Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu and Kerala. People of the four states speak languages of the Dravidian family. Quite like North India, the South too has its share of diverse kinship system. The state of Kerala is distinct for its matrilineal system of descent and the practice of intercaste hypergamy. Also, despite common elements, each of four states has its own social structural pattern of kinship. Just as we did in the case of North Indian kinship, we will focus on common elements in terms of four major aspects of kinship relation, namely kinship group, kinship terminology, marriage rules, and ceremonial exchange of gifts among kin. The first is kinship group. We can categorize kin relatives in South India in two groups, namely the patrilineage and the affinals. The first is patrilineage. Quite like in North India and South India too, the fact of relating to various categories of kin beyond one's immediate family means a close interaction with members of one's petty lineage. Owing to petty local residence, the lineage members get the chances for frequent interaction and cooperation. The ties of descent and residence constitute a kin group. You may observe that each of the two regions, South and North India, has such a group. For example, in her studies of the Brahmins of Tanjore district, Guho describes patrilineal descent groups which are distributed in small communities. Each caste within the village contains 1 to 12 exogamous patrilineal group. Now the point is affinal relative. The kin group of the affinal relative, those related through marriages, is opposition to the patrilineage. Beyond the patrilineage are the relative who belong to the group in which one's mother was born, as well as one's wife. A person's uterine or mama and affinal or kin comprise a common group of mama messenger. This group is relatively includes also the group in which the person's sister and father's sisters are married. Demount has described the nature of interaction between a patrilineage and its affinities to be always cordial and friendly. Indirect Pangali. If group A is one's patrilineage and group B is one's mama messenger, then members of the group C, which is mama messenger of group B, will become classificatory brothers to people of group A. The term for such classification brothers is Mureku Pangali. These relatives, though called a kind of Pangali, are never equal to actual comcasses or sharers of joint patrilineal property. Beyond this circle of relatives, the rest are only neutral people. Let us now discuss the South Indian kinship terminology, which places particular emphasis on the affinal relationships. Those who follow the alliance approach are particularly interested in affinal relationships. Now the point is kinship terminology. Kinship relationship in Dravidian language follow a clear-cut structure with the precision. According to Louis Dumont, main features of these systems are that it distinguishes between the parallel and cross cousins, and it is classificatory. Let us discuss these two features. The first is parallel and cross cousins. Parallel cousins are those who are the children of the siblings of the same sex. This means that children of two brothers or of two sisters are parallel cousins to each other. Cross cousins are those who are the children of the siblings of the opposite sex. This means that children of a brother and a sister are cross cousins. The kin terminology in South India clearly separates the two categories of the cousins for the reasons that parallel cousins cannot marry each other while the cross cousins can. If the system of terminology did not distinguish between the two categories, there would have been utter confusion in the minds of the people. But as any speaker of one of the four Dravidian languages will tell us, there is never any doubt as to who is one's parallel cousin, with whom we behave as brother sister, and who is one's cross cousin, with whom one is to remain distant and formal. The parallel cousins are referred as brother or sister For example, in Tamil, one address all paler cousins Anna, means elder brother, or Tambi, younger brother, and Akka, elder sister, or Tangachi, younger sister. Cross cousins are never brother sisters. For example, in Tamil, one refers to cross cousin as Mama Mangal, and Ati Mangal or Mangal. This system of kinship terms agrees with the practice of marriage among the close relatives. It separates all descent lines into those with whom one can marry and those with whom one cannot marry. The terminology clearly tells that in a person's own generation, males are either one's brother or brothers-in-law. Similarly, females are either sister or potential spouses. We can argue that in this very sense, Morgan described the Dravidian kinship terminology as consistent and symmetrical. For the sake of comparison, let us clarify that North India, all cousins are considered consanguines or brother or sisters. They are not allowed to marry each other. Then, in this respect, we can see how North Indian kinship system is different from one in the South India and how the kinship terminology reflects this distinction. Classificatory nature of kinship terminology. We can say that Dravidian kinship terms are a mirror image of the kinship system in South India because classificatory nature of terminology matches perfectly with the distinction between the parallel and cross cousin. The terminology becomes classificatory in the following manners. The person's own generation is terminologically divided into two categories. One group consists of all brothers and sisters, including one's parallel cousins and the children of father's parallel cousins. The other group comprises cross cousins and affinal relatives such as the wife or husband of the category A relatives. In Tamil, this category is called by term of Mama Machina. We can also see how the two classes of kin divide relatively in one's own generation and in both ascending and descending generation. Now the topic is one's own generation. This bipartition applies to the whole generation of a person. In other words, all one's relatives in one's own generation are systematically classified in this way. There is no third category of relatives. People falling into either category are not considered to be relative. This Tamil term for category is Pangali, which means those who share. The word Pangali has connotations of both the general and the specific kind. In its general sense, it refers to classificatory brothers who do not share a joint property. They are all reckoned as Pangali. In its specific sense, the word Pangali refers to the strictly those people who have a share in the joint family property. Here we are more concerned with the classificatory Murai connotation of this term. The two categories, Bengali and Mama Michai, are both opposed and exclusive to each other. This classification, which has been explained above in terms of relatives in one's own generation, applies to groups, lineage, village, and so on. This bipartition applies to both the generation above one's own and the generation below one's own. Affines of affines. The principle of classifying relationship in the categories of Bengali and the Mama Minchai extends to even those who are the affines of one's affines. As we have already seen the rules for that, one has to assign a class to each relative. If A is a affine of B and who is an affine of C, then the relationship between A and C has to be. According to the above formulation, there that is a Murai Bengali or classificatory brother. This is so because anyone who is related to you and is not your Mama Machai then has to be your Murai Bengali or classificatory brothers. Now the topic is age and sex distinction. By separating the older and younger relatives, the ego's generation is divided into two parts. Similarly, the father's generation is also divided into two parts. In Tamil, brothers and sisters, parallel cousins older to the egos are called Anna or Akka. Relatively, and those younger to ego are called Tambi, Tangachi, respectively. In the same way, all brothers, sisters, and parallel cousins older to one's father are called Periyappa, Periyamma, and younger ones are Chittiyappa, Siniyappa, Chittithi, Siniyamma, respectively. The sex distinction is paired yet says demands with the alliance distinction. As soon as distinction is not necessary for establishing an alliance relationship, it is merged. This is what we need in the case of kin terms applied in grandparental and grandchildren's generation for the generation of one's grandchild. One does not distinguish between one's sons and daughters' children. Both are referred in Tamil as the Peran or Pathithi. Similarly, maternal grandfather or mother and the paternal grandfather or mothers are designated by a common term, Tata for the grandfather and the Pati for the grandmother. Merging of the sex distinction in the generation of grandparents and grandchildren shows the boundaries where the relationship of alliance ceases to matter and the two sides can be assimilated into one category. The above description of the kinship terminology in South India should not give us the impression that are no variation in this general picture. In fact, particular features of kinship terms in specific regions are of great interest to sociologists. For example, Louis Damont has discussed in particular feature of kinship among the Pramlal color of Tamil Nadu, but here we can concerned with only the general and broad scheme of the kinship terminology. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.